Hey guys, this is here bringing you another video. Now welcome to the High Ranking Spectate. Today we are watching Lee Sin. One of my older mains, we are talking, and it's a weird thing with time, is I remember my Lee Sin days like they were yesterday, but they were like 6 years ago. I mained Lee Sin back in like Season 3 and Season 4. And we're now approaching Season 11, so that's kind of crazy. Anyway, Lee Sin waiting in that bush for the inevitable ward that came. Lee Sin starts W in the jungle, which is normal. And with the increased attack speed, he managed actually to take out the ward at level 1. That's actually a pretty big deal. Doesn't go back, because doesn't really need to in the end. I'm probably going to start over on the red buff. But yeah, the reason why I'm watching Lee Sin is I have heard, and I stream obviously on Twitch and have a good interaction with my chat, and people in chat are like asking me to play certain champions, and the general vibe, because there's only me and I can have my opinion on champions, but I haven't matched or played all the champions in preseason. The general vibe when it comes to Lee Sin is people think he's pretty weak. So I thought we'd watch a Lee Sin game, and this game obviously is a Lee Sin doing well. But I just wanted to see how that is, because I probably do share the opinion that Lee Sin is on the weaker side right now. And I'm not... Am I disappointed? Yes and no. Lee Sin, if we really think about it, was really the golden champion of League of Legends from about Season 3 till probably about Season 7. Lee Sin was like the jungler. Like, most junglers had to play Lee Sin, and if you didn't, you were rare. And in the pro scene, a lot of the big pro plays always was around Lee Sin as well. So he was a big... He's a big champion in the history of the game. But they have kind of moved on from him, which, again, I think it's fine. Also a very important thing is we're watching this guy. This guy is currently in Master. Again, unfortunately, because so many people aren't playing Ranked at the moment, I couldn't find an active Challenger Lee Sin player. So this player is Master, still actively playing solo queue. So it's a very decent rank. So you can play Lee Sin to get to Master and above. So as I've always said, you can play any champion to get Challenger. It's more about the player than the champion, but you make it harder or easier for yourself depending what champions you play. And back in the day, Lee Sin was one of, like, if you want to say, the core solo queue champions for jungle climbing, but now he's not. Meanwhile, a level 3 gank happens in mid. They actually got the Echo's Flash. First blood happens to the Yasuo in bot lane, and the Thresh now is also looking to be dead, and giving the Misfortune the free kill. Meanwhile, Lee Sin going to top lane, and I actually can swap those two around because it's a Yasuo bot, Victor mid. Lee Sin looking for a lane gank. It's Sylas versus Ornn. Sylas, by the way, to me seems incredibly strong at the moment because, unfortunately, the healing issues in the game are still apparent. Anti-healing, I've mentioned a couple times, anti-healing didn't really do anything. Meanwhile, they're going to go for potentially a dive? Yeah, they're going for a dive. He presses W to give the shield. The stun happens. Lee Sin hits the Q. And going to follow up with the flash, and will probably just survive. Kha'Zix in the area. Lee Sin definitely in trouble. Probably is dead. Kha'Zix did flash for that. Lee Sin's avoiding it. W's with a trinket out the way. Smites that to get health back. And Kha'Zix, what are you doing? Walks into 3 players. Victor on his way up. These 3 should probably hightail, leg it out of there. And that overall is a good play. 1 kill for the Lee Sin, 1 assist. Meanwhile, Ornn again on the back foot. Does get the double knock up, and that might get him to safety, but that's not good for this Ornn, obviously. Dying, having to blow his flash, then, nearly dying again isn't going to make this guy have a great lane phase, and he's already half farmed to the Sylas. But yeah, I do think Sylas is insanely strong. As I was saying, is Riot came out and goes, oh, we're going to try and fix healing. They haven't. And yes, there are certain conditions that healing has been weaker, but I'd say fundamentally average healing is still in the game. When I say average healing, like passive healing, like Sylas's W or like lifesteal, that is still really strong. Maybe like proper healing, like Soraka's and stuff, have been toned down a bit, but with the damage in the game on average going up 20-30%, healing is percentage. So Sylas's healing and lifesteal, these are all like mainly how much damage you're dealing. The more damage you're dealing, the more you're going to heal. And because damage has gone up, so has healing. Meanwhile, this Lee Sin playing smart. Has to be careful on the back foot, though. The Ornn is being a bit aggressive, but I think there's not much anything's going to happen here. And Lee Sin will pick up a second kill. So Ornn nearly got one. He actually might get the Sylas, the minions, and unfortunately he just missed out. Lee Sin going to help push the wave in. But yeah, so the Lee Sin so far, nothing crazy's happened, but what we're seeing is what I would just say is smart jungling. He goes to top lane, that's where he decided to go early. It worked really well. The Ornn now is a very low mobility champion, and is very strong in the early game in, you know, dealing with 1v2 situations. So he doesn't have flash, he's slow. He just waits for him to come back to lane, and there's not really much the Ornn can do. Meanwhile, the Kha'Zix was doing counter jungling over here and actually gets killed by the bot lane of the Lee Sin. So this game overall is going pretty well. Lee Sin goes and gets his Serrated Dirk, which I presume, I don't know exactly what item the Lee Sin will go. Eclipse, maybe? I guess we'll see this game. Yasuo is roaming up. And I will say, I don't know if it's been apparent, but Yasuo bot lane was, like, really popular. Meanwhile, a dive. This is very weird. A dive is coming out of the enemy team. This, to me, seems desperate. I don't know what they're doing. Remember, this is a high-rating game on EU West. So I don't know what that was about. But, like, yeah, Yasuo bot lane was insanely popular a few months back. It's kind of died. Like, this Yasuo bot lane is the first one that I think I've seen in quite a long time. Definitely probably in preseason. I don't know. Maybe it's just because, like, I know the biggest, you know, whether it's right or wrong, AD carries are complaining quite a lot in preseason. I will just say AD carries on general are the most complaining group of champion mains in the game. No offense if you're an AD carry main, but my god. And I think it's because AD carries expect them to do the highest damage in the game, being an AD carry, but then also managing to survive against things. I think that's where sometimes AD carries can be a bit Like, you have to have a weakness, and the AD carry's main weakness is that they're really squishy, so they should be able to die quite quick. The problem that we've got is the damage, as I've said, has gone up on percentage, so AD carries are having a harder time surviving. But, you know, the highest damage, one of the highest damage dealers in the game right now is Jhin. You know, his popularity is booming, but also his ban rate is going up right now too, with the Dark Harvest Eclipse build. But that, you know, Misfortune is still there. Ezreal is doing pretty good popularity-wise. So AD carries, if you look at, like, champions played, like percentage-wise, there's always like 3 or 4 AD carries in the top 10, and obviously that's mainly, you could argue, like, oh, because, you know, there's less AD carries to choose from. But you've still got a bunch that you can play, and they feel fine. You just have to have, like I would say, you have to have more solid positioning now than maybe before, and maybe that's the problem, is because the survival is harder. But I think their damage is high, and maybe Yasuo has lost popularity down in bot lane because he's having a harder time surviving. Meanwhile, Lee Sin looking for this Ornn. The Ornn ult from the Sylas did go off and got the knock up on the Ornn. Ornn does die then to the Lee Sin. Nice combo by those two. And this is, by the way, what we're seeing. You're like, oh, how's this Lee Sin is just mainly camping top? Yeah. As someone that, like, if you know, arguably mains top lane, if one jungler decides to camp top lane and one doesn't, it's a living nightmare for you as a top laner, because there really is nothing you can do. Like, genuinely. Like, this game, the Ornn is under half farm. He's under XP by 2 levels to his lane opponent. And by the way, there's nothing he can do. Like, what can he do? If his jungler isn't willing to help, there's nothing you can do. And that's top lane. And it does feel poo. Meanwhile, Yasuo of all champions is now roaming. Enemy team looking for it. Lee Sin does die, which is a good play by the enemy team. Lee Sin being the first death on blue team. But I don't know why Yasuo is over there, to be honest. You know, he's going to be now missing a bunch of tower plates on his tower. Kha'Zix is looking to cover. But yeah. Sylas, though, going to go on the aggression onto the Ornn, but Lee Sin does respawn. Kha'Zix, by the way, quite far behind, only has 3 long swords. How much gold does he have? He does have 1,100 gold, so obviously that will help. But he is 1,000 roughly gold down to the Lee Sin right now. That is quite substantial. Echo, though, is... you know, 700 gold down on the Victor. The Victor's having a great game. Again, one of these champions that has definitely had a good impact with preseason. Yasuo decides to go a very weird route to lane. Yeah, the Yasuo is obviously not having a great one. But what I would say, question of the day is, I don't want your opinions. Lee Sin finds the Kha'Zix. Would he go down? Kha'Zix flashing, but the red smite? Yes, red smite for Lee Sin does finish off the kill, which is good for the Lee Sin. So I want to know your opinion about preseason in the question of the day, but not how do you think it's going when it comes to balance. We've asked that question a couple times already. I want to know, how has the behavior in the game been for you in preseason overall? I'd say for me, overall it has been better than the season. But unfortunately, today was the first actual inter I've had in quite some time. I only played one game of League today, and I genuinely had an intentional feeder. It was an Alawi. She got beat in lane and then got obviously very tilted and was running down mid lane and inting. Them inters types are quite rare, but you know, having a genuine inter. Meanwhile, Lee Sin kicks the Yasuo into the wall. He gets stunned by Leona and will die in the end. So yeah, this Yasuo having a pretty poor game. But right now, I'd say this is a pretty just dominant performance in the jungle. Lee Sin being involved in 8 out of the 12 kills, and obviously Kha'Zix being involved in none. So the jungle difference from like Season 10, where it was really about which jungler was doing better, seemed to determine most games' outcome. For the most part, I think that still is relatively the same, because objectives are still incredibly important. And the XP, again, it's quite hard for the junglers to stay level pegging if one's doing good or one's really doing bad. Luckily for this Kha'Zix is obviously Lee Sin is going for very gank heavy. So the Kha'Zix is over 20 farm ahead of this Lee Sin. So he's managing to stay in XP range of the Lee Sin because of the farm difference. But if this Kha'Zix wasn't farming as well, or if Kha'Zix was like, no, I'm going to also take fights, and if those fights went bad, this is where he'd get really far behind. Or if the Lee Sin was farming even more with also maintaining this high kill ratio, then again, the Kha'Zix can't keep up. So the Lee Sin, by the way, has gone for Eclipse. Again, Eclipse seems just to be a very solid item. You can see Miss Fortune as well doing it, and she's got the same principle as the Jhin, who's really popular right now. Dark Harvest, Eclipse, Miss Fortune. It probably, you know, it does decent damage, let's be honest. Lee Sin going aggressive for the Yasuo, hits the Q. Where's the Wind Wall? A really late Wind Wall by Yasuo. He is going to go aggressive on the Lee, but he will end up dead to the Echo. Meanwhile, top lane, though, they finally kill the Sylas. He dies for the first time. And by the way, it has gone a Liandry's build, which for the most part does seem, again, still quite a strong item. Has been nerfed a couple times or once, but fundamentally, these items are strong. That's the thing. You know, it's a percentage health burning thing. It's going to be good. Like Liandry's Torment before preseason, that was a strong item. People enjoyed that on mages, so especially that you now have the synergy with it with Demonic Embrace, that you're kind of just burning a lot of damage, burning a lot of health, sorry. It's pretty decent. Meanwhile, enemy team I think was doing Rift Herald, but they managed to get caught out. Nice stun by Leona, is going to try and go over with the stun. That Miss Fortune damage is high. Meanwhile, Lee Sin finds the Victor, who's on the back foot, and also will go down. So a very big stomp at the moment, but in essence, the Lee Sin, does he feel okay? Well, yeah, like this Lee Sin feels fine. So this game shows, because I have had people literally in my Twitch chat going, I literally can't play Lee Sin. Like, you know, I'm going to quit the game type thing. You can play any champion you want, but again, it just makes it harder or easier for yourself. But like Kha'Zix right now is one of the stronger junglers in the game, but this Lee Sin is beating this Kha'Zix. This Kha'Zix isn't playing well. So this is just a thing that you've got to take on the, you know, just have the knowledge. Not every game is determined by champion picks. It sometimes is determined by how well the player is doing personally. So yeah, just worth noting that. And again, this Yasuo, I'm not sure if it's a Yasuo main or why he's playing Yasuo bot lane still, but what you'll also find, if, you know, this game he's 0-5, 2 or 3 games in his match history, like down the line, I bet he has a legendary game on Yasuo. Like, that's just the thing with solo queue, is you have good games, you have bad games. And I think the biggest thing that my takeaway from preseason is the game, for me, has just become more one-sided. So these type of stomps are just going to become more common. And, you know, Season 10 was quite a stompy season as well. But I just think a lot of stomps are going to happen. You can see this Kha'Zix, by the way, as a champion, still has crazy damage, is looking aggressive on the Lee Sin, that the Lee Sin missed his Q, therefore the Kha'Zix, let's be honest, the Kha'Zix was winning that fight. If no one was around, Lee Sin lost that fight. But obviously, being that aggressive in the enemy jungle got the Kha'Zix killed, that the Lee Sin didn't die in time. But I think that's more what it is the game is more snowbally, because items individually mean more than they used to, or at least to me that they do. And yeah, so when one team gets ahead, it's very hard for the other team to catch up. If it's a big snowball. If it's like, oh, you know, we got a small advantage in the early game, then yeah, maybe you can kind of catch up. Maybe. I think it's still harder than it used to be. And for people that just don't like, you know, massive snowballs. I imagine people don't love the changes in the game, but I also think they are going to continue balancing it in their, you know, we did a dev update the other day. They even said, like, there's too much damage in the game. And yeah, there really is. I think if you tone down the damage, that will help. There'll be less snowballs. But I've experienced that in my own personal games, is that there's just so many snowballs in the game currently. Meanwhile, Lee Sin hits a Q, and by the way, that Q alone kind of makes the enemy team calm down. Like, the Yasuo only was going aggressive there, but the rest of them calmed down because they're like, oh, Lee Sin's here too. It's not a 2v4, it's a 3v4. And Echo, this has also given Echo time to get here as well. Lee Sin hits his Q, does get hooked, but the Misfortune ultimate damage very high. Victor damage doing decent as well, and the enemy team is just getting completely wiped out. Sylas also from the left does get that kill. Misfortune damage, by the way, holy moly, that was high. She also has the Collector, so literally the Jhin build. My guess is Jhin got banned this game, therefore, okay, I'll do the exact same build on Misfortune instead. Meanwhile, the enemy's mid lane is getting broken into. And, you know, the Victor, by the way, having not a poor game at all, actually doing quite well. Unfortunately for him, his whole team is doing pretty bad. But that just, you know, it still shows that Victor's fine. He isn't doing the Imperial Mandate build, though. He is still going Liandry's Anguish, which is still fine. But I think the Imperial Mandate build is going to gain popularity. And if I had to guess, I don't think it's going to stick around for long. Or at least, it's, you know, it might be nerfed a bit. Meanwhile, the overstay potential by blue team does get the Leona killed, but only Leona for now. But yeah, Mandate, Imperial Mandate is a support item. Mages now are predominantly buying it. Like, I think it will get toned down, or it will get changed somehow that, like, I don't know, it's a support item. Like, I don't know how you could make it that only supports could buy it. I guess you can't. But what I have said before as well, I kind of like that the mythic items aren't, like, only for, like, what you would think. Like, for example, Yasuo here has bought an Immortal Shield Bow. Technically, that's an AD carry item, but he's buying that. Like, he, you know, he's not buying... Like, Yasuo is a duelist kind of champion. He's not buying, technically, a duelist mythic. So I do and I don't like... Well, and also, like, Lee Sin. It's like, well, Kha'Zix is an assassin. He's got a dueling item. So, I don't know, like... I kind of like, at the same time, that the mythic items are a bit fluid in what you can do with them. Victor actually missed his ultimate there. Echo going to go into the fight. Isn't dead. Again, Echo for me is still what I would deem a problematic champion. The easiest fix to Echo, I think, personally, and what feels the most unhealthy with him, like, you know, everyone does a lot of damage, that's fine. The most unhealthy thing with Echo is his E. Is that you can press E, and when you get the animation for the second half, it will hit no matter what, practically. You cannot dodge it because I think it's a teleport, not a dash. That feels sometimes unhealthy. Like, oh, I flashed it, but I still got killed by it. Maybe that, if you change that to be a dash instead of a teleport, that would make the champion feel a little bit less oppressive. But that's, you know, other than that, that's probably what I would make Echo. Like, he's obviously, he's supposed to be kind of an annoying champion, but that's the main thing I would change. Sylas steals the Victor ultimate. Yasuo on the back foot again. Lee Sin looks for the aggression, but doesn't get it. Misfortune not coming over the top just to block the enemy team. Ornn, was that a teleport? I think Ornn TP to his own tower. Enemy team having a bit of a fight now, a bit of aggression. Leona does finish off the Kha'Zix. Leona stunning. The Thresh is in trouble. Lee Sin hits the Q with then the follow-up. Then onto the Yasuo. And he will go down to the Misfortune with the high damage from Collector. Misfortune is legendary. Lee Sin also 8-1-10. And you can see Lee Sin also caught up a little bit in farm, by the way. He was over 20 farm behind. He's now only 7 farm behind. So, you know, the game itself is becoming harder for the enemy team. Therefore, you know, territory is becoming less available for the enemy team to actually farm in. Right, so they're going to back out. Lee Sin, item-wise, obviously has other lethality in his wallet, in his inventory, and he has over 2,000 gold at this stage of the game. Just be holding is quite a lot, so I imagine he'll go back after doing a little bit of clearing. He may even go down and do Dragon, and then Yumu's maybe will be his item, or Edge of Night actually might be the item. That the spell block is very useful on a champion that has to go all in. Because, you know, if Lee Sin wants to go for an insect, and that's one thing you'll also note, this guy has not done, I think, one single insect kick or a flash kick this game. It's become more apparent that, becomes more apparent than when you do those type of things. It makes it very sometimes awkward, and they have surrendered, and you can muck them up easy. So every single time that I've seen a Lee Sin, and we've done a couple Challenger spectates over the last 6 months, it's very common that Lee Sins play more basic than what they probably did 4 or 5 years ago on Lee Sin. Like when I main Lee Sin, it was all about insect kicks and flash kicks. That was what made you a good Lee Sin player, was doing those. You don't see them anymore because, I don't know, it's risky because it's more likely that you're going to muck it up. So you just play more basic, more just kind of straight, and that will probably help, and you're probably just going to end up having an overall better performance on Lee Sin. So yeah, that was Lee Sin though. Didn't feel bad. You know, this video title is Lee Sin playable in Season 11? The answer is yes. Or can you play Lee Sin in Season 11? Yes, you can. But like any game, one team wins, one team loses, one team snowballs, one team doesn't. This Lee Sin had a strategy that he went top lane early. He then camped a little bit of top lane, and that got him that early lead that he needed to then the Kha'Zix didn't have an advantage over him. So if you're a Lee Sin player, maybe this is the strategy you should adopt. Not saying you have to camp top lane, but, you know, camp mid, camp top. Get a flash or a kill in the early game, and then you can return to that lane. That is just a overall good jungle strategy, and I would actually very much recommend it really for top lane, because top lane usually is an island that no jungler goes to. So if you're a jungler and you choose to go top lane, you're likely the only jungler going there, and there's really nothing the other top laner can do. But yeah, that's going to be it. If you guys enjoyed, throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe. Let me know again what is your opinion on preseason so far, but when it comes to behavior more than anything else, I'll be interested to know, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.